Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am deeply honored today to present House Bill 2021, which will set the state of Oregon on a course toward 100% clean electricity, and in a distinctly Oregon way. First, I want to provide a brief operational overview. House Bill 2021 requires Oregon's 2 large investor-owned utilities and our independent electricity service suppliers to provide 100% emissions-free electricity by the year 2040, with intermediary targets along the way. So what does that mean? In a little less than 20 years, Oregon's electricity will be powered by energy sources that produce no greenhouse gas emissions. That will certainly include hydropower, solar, and wind, as well as end-user strategies like energy efficiency and demand response. But it will also encompass energy sources still in development, like offshore wind and renewable hydrogen. In fact, the bill's ambitious timeline will send a critical market signal to spur advancement of those new technologies. House Bill 2021 sets a clear, linear, and predictable course toward 2040. Upon passage of the legislation, each utility will be required to develop a clean energy plan that describes how the utility intends to achieve the new clean energy targets. Plans will set annual emission goals and describe the actions and investments to be implemented, including acquisition of non-emitting resources, end-user strategies, new transmission infrastructure, retirement of existing resources, or other actions necessary to achieve emissions targets. The Public Utility Commission will review plans to make sure that they align with our targets and serve the public good. Clean energy plans will be reviewed every 2 years to track progress and update strategies. Enforcement of the move to 100% is simple and straightforward. The Department of Environmental Quality will use its existing emissions monitoring system to track emissions and document progress towards goals. DEQ data will be reported to the PUC, which will evaluate those numbers for consistency with the utility's plan. And if something goes awry, the PUC can use various monitoring strategies, including a temporary exemption from compliance if necessary to maintain system reliability, to meet demand in the case of resource variability, or to respond to cumulative rate impacts that exceed 6% of revenues, although those are not anticipated. Both the utilities and the Citizens Utility Board believe that ratepayers will see no cost increases outside of normal fluctuations. And this is largely due to the fact that renewable energy is increasingly the most economically sound investment choice. Simply put, clean electricity is an excellent choice for your pocketbook. Madam Speaker, that's the fairly straightforward structure of our path to 100% clean. But I promised you that this bill is designed in a uniquely Oregon way, and now I'd like to spend a few minutes highlighting program components that benefit ratepayers, environmental justice communities, local jurisdictions, workers, renewable developers, and economic vitality. We know that the transition to clean energy must support and empower our most vulnerable communities. Accordingly, House Bill 2021 requires each utility to establish community benefits and impacts advisory panels. Those panels will be comprised of individuals who represent the utility's customers, including members of environmental justice communities defined as rural, coastal, tribal, BIPOC, low income, and other groups traditionally underrepresented in public processes. Panels will advise the utility on a range of relevant issues, including but not limited to clean energy plan development, energy burden and disconnects, actions to increase resilience, and social, economic, and environmental co-benefits that can result from utility investments. So clearly, House Bill 2021 is good for consumers, and it is also good for communities. Green tariff programs created in the bill will enable local jurisdictions and utilities to work together to design electricity programs for places that want to accelerate progress toward climate goals. Those custom programs can be designed to target specific community priorities, including local ownership, disaster resiliency, jobs, and water savings, or to spur development of targeted renewable infrastructure such as microgrids, storage, or other community-based projects. And House Bill 2021 is good for workers. Apprenticeship requirements and responsible contractor and labor standards will apply to projects over 10 megawatts to ensure fair wages and good health and retirement benefits for employees. The bill encourages project labor agreements and aims for 15% of work hours be performed by BIPOC, women, veterans, or people with disabilities. And finally, Madam Speaker, House Bill 2021 sets a clear course toward local renewable energy development that can provide jobs and boost community economic vitality. Indeed, this bill can serve as a critical energy component of our state's economic recovery and resilience efforts in response to the pandemic, wildfires, and drought. House Bill 2021 is expected to spur more than 2,700 megawatts in new renewable energy by 2030, and that is over and above what would be produced under current regulations. That's enough energy to power 700,000 homes. And we want to make sure that a significant portion of that new development includes smaller community-based renewable projects. House Bill 2021 takes 4 important steps toward that end. First, the clean energy planning process that I described earlier requires utilities to address the costs and benefits of resiliency, as well as the cost and opportunities of replacing fossil fuels with community renewable projects. That analysis will be assessed and probably debated in a transparent and public setting as the PUC evaluates the utilities' clean energy plans. Second, House Bill 2021 requires utilities to increase their purchase of energy from small renewable projects from 8 to 10% of their total energy load by 2030. Third, House Bill 2021 instructs the Oregon Department of Energy to conduct a study of small-scale and community-based projects to identify incentives or barriers to development. And last but certainly not least, House Bill 2021 establishes a $50 million Community Renewable Energy Project Grant Program to support the planning and development of community renewable energy and resilience projects that are 20 megawatts or less in size. Local governments, tribes, and consumer-owned utilities will be eligible to apply for funding for projects that have a direct benefit to the community in the form of resilience, local jobs, economic development, or energy cost savings. $50 million will enable us to seed and support projects all over the state. Moreover, it will provide direct experience on the ground to help us understand, first, the multiple benefits that can accrue through local projects, and 2, how to assign a dollar value to those benefits when we evaluate project feasibility. This experience, further informed by the ODO study and the Clean Energy Plan mandates, will set the course for more community project development. Madam Speaker, I am so proud to be a part of this historic legislation, and I am deeply grateful to the stakeholders who have worked tirelessly to design this very clear blueprint toward the state's clean electricity future. While House Bill 2021 has been vetted in multiple legislative committees, the bill was developed through a collaborative process that included environmental justice organizations, ratepayer representatives, climate advocates, the renewable industry, labor, independent power producers, and the utilities themselves. In some cases, these were partners who, quite frankly, had never sat down together before. But despite their disparate backgrounds, the stakeholders recognized the opportunity in front of us to create a consensus path toward 100% that reflects our state's values and priorities, a plan that is, at its essence, distinctly Oregonian. The Joint Committee on Ways and Means recommends passage of House Bill 2021, and I urge and I vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a couple comments. I want to note, I didn't mention the tribal language that is in the bill, but I wanted to call it out and note that it codifies but does not change current requirements for consultation, but we thought it was important to note in the legislation. I also want to note my enthusiasm because I think this bill and the programs that are funded in it will really serve to increase diversity in the alternative energy workforce. Right now, frankly, we're not doing very well. If you look at the solar industry, 73% of the workforce is white, 26% of the workforce are women compared to 47% of the workforce nationally. And it's even worse when you look at senior executives who are 88% white and 80% men. We're very hopeful that this bill, with its specific language around encouraging diversity, will change those numbers. And finally, I want to provide a thanks again to the stakeholders, including the utilities, who produced the vision, who believe in it, and who designed the path. And finally, Madam Speaker, just a personal comment. You have heard me rise on this floor many times over the past 6 months and describe the devastation experienced by my community in the 2020 wildfires. And of course, those wildfires impacted not just my communities, but places in many different corners of the state. I am tremendously grateful to my colleagues for their support and their willingness to really help these communities just get a toehold on recovery. But even as I advocate for recovery resources, I am compelled to look at the future. And when I do, what I see is more wildfire and tumultuous storms. Look at the temperatures expected this weekend, and ongoing and prolonged drought. And what I know when I look at that is that if we fail to address the underlying conditions, we are just going to be back in this Capitol year after year trying to help communities out of disastrous situations. House Bill 2021 will help us understand how to really help our vulnerable communities become resilient. And in addressing energy mix, it will help us mitigate the climate tumult that is driving conditions on the ground. And it's going to do it all in a distinctly Oregonian way. Colleagues, I urge an aye vote on House Bill 2021.